History gravitates toward the thunder of great battles, the distant, imperious commands of generals sheltered from bloodshed, and the tireless grind of political machinery steering nations into darkness. Yet far from these sweeping theaters of war, in the oppressive heat and tangled shadows of Guadalcanal, another battle emerged. This was a war waged not with the deafening roar of tanks or shrieking planes, but through whispered warnings and the soft, deliberate crunch of bare feet slipping through enemy lines. Before war painted their world in shades of blood and gunsmoke, the Solomon Islands were a place where time moved like honey, sweet and slow. But tranquility, as they would learn, always carries a price.
The forces of Imperial Japan had reached the Solomon Islands, which just a few years earlier writers described as the most remote place on Earth.
Then came the Japanese, their ships darkening the horizon like storm clouds. For a fleeting moment, some islanders dared to hope for a different kind of freedom, one that might break colonial chains. But war's brutal reality shattered that fragile hope. Imperial Japanese soldiers arrived with cold indifference. The war swept in like a typhoon, sudden, violent, transforming everything it touched. The jungle, once a source of life, became a keeper of death. For 6 harrowing months, the island evolved into a meat grinder. Control of the airfield meant commanding vital shipping lanes to Australia. Losing it could have meant the collapse of the Allied Pacific campaign entirely.
There was a lot of work to be done before planes could use the field. It was chock full of shell craters. The Marines and Seabees rushed the field through on the double. They used everything they could lay their hands on, including Jap steamrollers.
Amid this unrelenting violence, the Solomon Islanders revealed their quiet strength, a power not forged in steel, but ingrained in their intimate knowledge of the land.
On Guadalcanal, Marine commanders were helped materially by information supplied by friendly natives. Officers like Raider Colonel Evans Carlson received hearty cooperation from most of the Melanesian inhabitants.
Scouts moved like shadows across familiar trails, slipping undetected through enemy lines. Every soft footfall became an act of defiance. Women, their hands worn from toil and grief, turned to ancient practices, brewing herbal medicines that served as lifelines when modern treatments faltered. One of their own, Sergeant Major Jacob Vuza, revealed a quiet strength that became a symbol of defiance. Captured by a Japanese patrol suspecting American collaboration, he was forced onto a nest of fire ants that turned his skin into a canvas of pain. When his silence persisted, they bound him to a tree, each calculated thrust of their bayonets designed not to kill, but to break both body and spirit. Vuza remained unyielding. Left for dead at Alligator Creek, he found the will to free himself, crawling back to Allied lines, his whispered warning, "Japanese, heading this way. Many men." His actions saved hundreds of lives. Even years later, Vuza would offer a simple explanation for his choices. "We didn't choose sides. We chose to protect what was ours, our families, our land, our way of life." Australian coastwatcher Martin Clemens relied heavily on the local knowledge that kept him alive. "Without the scouts, I'd have been dead in a week," he wrote, a testament to the islanders who brought him food, misdirected Japanese patrols, and carried his equipment over mountains. It was not just their knowledge of the land that made the islanders invaluable, but their linguistic skill. Scouts like George Bogies became indispensable as interpreters and spies. Fluent in English, Japanese, multiple indigenous languages, Bogies could eavesdrop on enemy transmissions and relay critical intelligence. George could mimic a Tokyo accent perfectly, Clemens recalled in his 1943 report. The Japanese never suspected him.
The Battle of Guadalcanal is now shaping up in our favor, and man for man, American Marines are superior warriors.
For the islanders who aided Allied forces, their fight was less about flying foreign flags than protecting their futures, their right to wake up in a world they recognized. Some paid the ultimate price. Japanese forces in search of collaborators executed entire families who aided the Allies, but they endured. Their knowledge of the land, the rivers, the tides, the dense jungle paths, continued to serve as a defiant weapon. Jack Beati, a Roviana leader, turned his understanding of tidal patterns into a lifeline for U.S. Marines, sneaking them ashore under the cover of darkness. Later, he led a daring raid on a Japanese supply depot, his scouts blending in as fishermen. The Japanese never thought to check our canoes. Byuku Gasa and Eroni Kumana's courage became legendary. The pair discovered a young John F. Kennedy and his stranded crew after the sinking of PT-109. Navigating shark-infested waters, they paddled for days to bring news of the crew's survival. Capture would have meant torture and death, but they pressed on. "We were just fishermen," Gasa would later reflect, his words tinged with modesty. "The sea was our home. You helped those lost at sea. This is our way." Yet recognition came unevenly. While Kumana received modest awards, Gasa lived and died in poverty, overlooked by history until his passing in 2005. The war wasn't just an unwelcome disruption. It also brought fleeting opportunities for work, wages, and equality that had long eluded the islanders under colonial rule. But those moments of hope were brief. Time has softened the hard edges of war. Shell craters have become gentle depressions filled with rainwater and fallen leaves. Vines embrace the rusted bones of machines that once roared across these hills. Yet beneath this verdant peace lies a deeper story, etched not in monuments or medals, but in the very soil and soul of these islands. The people who tend these shores today move with an inherited knowledge, their daily rhythms carrying echoes of those who came before. They fish the same reefs where their grandparents once guided lost soldiers to safety. And yet, not all the wounds have healed. Unexploded ordnance still threatens lives, hidden in gardens and riverbeds. People tread carefully among the remnants of that violent past. The legacy of the Solomon Islanders endures. Their war was never about empire, but home. Their courage reminds us that even in the deepest darkness, ordinary people hold the power to guide us toward the light.